Hi, Katherine. I'm very happy to see that you've written another set of essays. Let's take a look at this one, see what you wrote. The first essay is about food miles. Is it better for the environment and economy if we eat only local food? Here's what you said. Experts throughout both the developing and developed world have debated food traveling from foreign countries to other regions. Some believe local food planting by farmers is beneficial for our well-being. Personally, I strongly agree. This essay will argue both sides and provide, get rid of that S, examples from the UK government and Oxford University to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Okay. It's fine. It's good. Although, let me tell you something that's a little bit strange about it. Here you said that you strongly agree, and so the implication is that you're going to argue both. You're going to be really strongly in favor of this local food. So if that's the case, it doesn't make sense why you would argue both sides. What would make more sense is that if you told us that while you see some benefits to say, for example, food being imported, on the whole, you are far more in favor of just local food. That would make sense for you to then say that you will argue both sides, okay? But logically, it just doesn't really follow that you strongly agree and yet you're going to argue both sides. Does that make sense? I hope so. Let's see. On the one hand, there is ample evidence importing food might lead to hazardous, O-U-S, impacts for our ecosystem. The central reason behind this is twofold. Firstly, food transportation generates ES, greenhouse gas emissions, which lead to global warming. All right, back it up. Give me some sort of statistic. Tell me why you think this and how maybe local food would prevent this. Secondly, the food safety may cause illness for citizens' health. Not one citizen, but S apostrophe. For example, recent empirical research by UK government demonstrated that foodstuffs imported, I don't know what that means, food imports is what you want to say here, accounted for 85% from 2011 to 2017 in UK, which produced the large amount of emissions to the planet among European countries. Okay. Let's see. So this example does not belong here. It belongs right after this. Okay. So firstly, food transportation generates greenhouse gas emissions which lead to global warming. For example, where is it? Here it is. Recent empirical research by the UK government demonstrated that food imports accounted for 85% of food in the UK, I think. I don't know. I'm not really confused. Accounted for 80% of what? Producing the largest amount of emissions to the planet. So there's a number of problems here, Katherine. The first thing, as I said, is that the example has to go directly after the main idea that it's illustrating, that it's supporting, okay? So this sentence belonged right after this. But the sentence grammatically has some problems that make it really incoherent. I'm trying to understand what this 85% belongs to, and then this which produced the largest amount of emissions. So it's all very confusing. Then you had this thing about food stuff and food safety, but where is there any illustration or any explanation or any sort of support for this? Because then you say here, it must not be forgotten that food transportation can cause detrimental impacts to our environment. Now, I don't know why you said that, because you said a very similar statement right here. And then you say, therefore, it is conclusively clear that food traveling certain brings drawbacks to the earth. So it feels like you've got three sentences that are basically saying the same thing. I'm okay with this one, and I'm okay with this one because it wraps up, but there's absolutely no purpose for this sentence here. What would have made sense is if you, as I said before, backed up this thing about food safety. Explain to me what you mean, because I just don't know. So it's not an adequately supported paragraph at all, and it's also not logically organized. Let's move to the second one. On the other hand, there is a case for goods transportate. No. Okay, so on the other hand, while there is a case for goods transportation, the importance of local food cannot be overstated. All right, you haven't really applied this sentence appropriately. This is largely because regional food keeps local land in production and local money in the community. In addition, local food causes less harm to the surroundings. For example, an extensive study by Oxford University showed that over 80% of farmers grew original food, growing local food provides over 50% of the output for the community, which builds community relations. Consistent with this line of thinking, eating locally maintains society's economic stability and supports regional finances with an S. Thus, it is possible to state beyond doubt that eating local food certainly makes our habitants superior. No, not superior. It makes them, it improves their lifestyle, it improves their finances, something like that. So let me see if I understand this correctly. Here, you're essentially talking about how local food improves the economy, fine. And here you're talking about importing food and how bad it is for the environment. Okay, so basically what you've done here is you've argued why importing food is bad, therefore we're supposed to assume that local food is good. Okay, but you're really asking the reader to make a stretch here. Rather than telling me why importing food is bad, it's better to tell me why local food is better for the environment. All right, now this would have been okay if you had somehow compared it, like these greenhouse emissions and so forth. If you had said that when local food is consumed only, there is 85% less greenhouse gases emitted. So you needed to bring this back to this idea of local food only, all right, rather than telling me that what's wrong with the opposite side, with this imported food, okay? I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Let's take a look at your conclusion. From the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that food from, not original place, from the local region has more positive impact for our environment. It is predicted that regional food will increasingly grow in importance. Okay, that's fine. So as we said already, there are a number of problems that I found in this essay. I see that you're trying to apply the template, but you haven't always applied it successfully. There's a lot of problems with the grammar that create incoherence in certain points. So grammar and some of the coherence and cohesion is lost, plus there's not, like, some of the ideas are not well organized. And here, like I said, I really don't support talking about what's wrong with imported food in order to say why local food is better for the environment, unless you actually state why local food is better for the environment. Okay? That's my feedback there. I'd like to look now at your task 1. Okay, chips sales. Let's see. It's not a bar graph, it's a bar chart. So the bar chart shows the number of sales. I'm going to just go through this to fix the grammar as well as I can. So the bar chart shows the number of sales by Intel and AMD in France in 2017 on a monthly basis. Overall, the figures, get rid of this. Let's see, overall, June showed the highest volume of sales for Intel, whereas the least sales were in November by AMD. It's actually not true. The least sales were also by AMD, but in June as well. There's no sales at all. So that's not entirely accurate, Catherine. As for Intel, no company, chip sales constantly grew in the first 3 months. In January, chip sale volume, you could have said. So chip sales accounted for 50,000 and almost doubled in March. April, May, and June shared the same trends. What does that mean? April, May, and June. April, May, and we're talking about Intel, right? April, May, and June. Well, so what are you telling me? You said that they increased and then it fell. So shouldn't you tell me that they fell in April? Because that's really confusing. If I didn't have the bar chart in front of me, I wouldn't have understood it. So you needed to say that after March, April dipped considerably again. Okay, the highest sales were in June, peaking at 130,000. This then dropped again in July. From August to October, the chip sales remained the same. Following this, the chip sales, or the chip performance, you could say, moderately increased in November, reaching 110,000, and slightly dropped to just 100,000 in December. Okay, so you can see I had to correct the grammar in every single sentence. I could understand what you were saying, but I still had to do it, so it was consistently inaccurate. Let's look at AMD's paragraph. So regarding AMD, chip sales fluctuated in the first 5 months. However, February reached 120,000. It was the largest sales of all year. Is that true? Well, hold on. Only for AMD, you have to say that, because the way you said it here, it's as if it was the greatest sales of both companies. So this was the highest selling month for AMD. Okay, AMD sold nothing in June. From July to October, sales performance accounted for 110, 45, 95, 75,000 respectively. Okay. The lowest point, no S, was in November, reaching 10,000, and then increased to 40,000 in December. Again, I said this before, it's not really accurate that's the lowest point. The lowest point is when I had 0 sales. Okay, I felt like this was a little too detailed, honestly. You shouldn't tell me every single month. You're supposed to highlight just the key months here, the ones that are the most important. I know that occasionally this is hard. You've got 24 pieces of data here, so you're wondering, well, what's important and what's not important. Let me give you some hints as to what is important and what is not. The beginning is important for both companies. The end is important for both companies. And some of these peaks and some of these lows. So, obviously this is extremely important, but I think these numbers are important as well. And then some of these really, really low numbers, like, let's see, AMD, November, I'm glad you mentioned that. June, I'm glad you mentioned that. But I really felt that there was just so much information in this paragraph about AMD that it became hard to follow. Now, some of the really successful task ones that I have read for this particular bar chart split the year in half. Okay, so rather than doing what you did, which is talk about the entire year for Intel and then talk about the entire year for AMD, some people have chosen to talk about the first half of the year, okay, which pretty much shows this increase by Intel throughout the 6 months, okay, with the exception of April, of course. And then pretty low numbers, if you think about it, for AMD, except for February. While on the other hand, you see a more gradual, you see a drop again, first of all, for Intel, but then a gradual rise, okay? On the other hand, you see higher numbers from Intel. It starts the period high, okay, at above 100,000. It has some fluctuation and then finishes the year at like 40,000. All right, so this is probably a good way to do it. Look for the trends. Look for some things that you can group together. That would be my advice to you. All right, so Katherine, go ahead and correct these, return them back corrected, and also let's see you working on improving some of these grammatical mistakes, okay? Good luck.